channel, One Race, Human Race, All Human. Today is Thursday, July 14th, 2022.
Did almost every option available to them to try to do so, Alicia.
Ali, I want to ask you about another story that was developing as we came on air. NBC has obtained this letter sent from the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General to the House and Senate Homeland Security Committees saying that the Secret Service erased text messages from January 5th and 6th after the Inspector General requested those records. The letter does not say whether the texts were deliberately deleted, but Ali, what do we know about this incident?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so much interest in what those Secret Service text messages could have been, especially given all of the information that the committee and others need to know around the 5th and 6th. Now, I will say, and we should put up on the screen, a tweet from the spokesperson from the Secret Service, of course, none too pleased with this reporting and promising that they will have their own response forthcoming. But what I think that this does, again, is it shows the challenge for the committee as they are laying out publicly all of their new findings, and yet still actively behind the scenes finding new findings. And it's why we've heard from people like Chairman Thompson when I asked him this the other day. Our reporting and expectation is that next Thursday in prime time is the final hearing, with an asterisk though, Alicia, because that's the summer phase of these hearings. Congressman Kinzinger leaving the door open to more hearings. The chairman himself telling me that there was the possibility of more hearings.
Absolutely, you have hearings. You have hearings until and after the election on Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. Here's something that is important to our democracy. And as goes America, so goes the world. This is very, very, very serious. And it needs to be kept in front of the American public because it's dealing with democracy. Everyone has a right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Everyone.
They expect to do one when they ultimately release a final report in the early fall, but that's not to say that they're not going to find occasion or new information to come forward and do more of these. We know, for example, that they're still considering what to do about Ginny Thomas. There's interest in at least the first tranche of potential documents from Steve Bannon with his about face that he may want to cooperate right now for whatever new reason. The committee's pretty skeptical there, but if they can get some documents from him, all of this could present new information, and all the committee wants to do is get as close as they can to the truth as possible.
Ali Vitale covering all of this for us from Capitol Hill. Ali, as always, thank you. Donald Ayer served as Deputy Attorney General under President George H.W. Bush. He is now calling for the Justice Department to prosecute Trump. He joins me now. If Donald Trump did, in fact, try to tamper with a witness in the committee's investigation, how do you read that choice? Do you read it as stupidity, as a flagrant attempt to intimidate, a complete disregard for the rule of law, or all of the above?
I think you really have to know more about the facts in order to give an...
Let me say this, that Donald Trump could be in jail and he can still be elected President of the United States of America, pardon himself, pardon every last one of the insurrectionists, et cetera, especially the way things are going with the legislatures now passing bills to change the Electoral College so they can decide who the electors are, et cetera, especially with voter suppression. That's why the Democratic Party should be having, well, the Republican Party should be having hearings on elections and the effect of these voter suppression laws on the primaries that have already been held, and secure the elections to make sure there's no intimidation, that people can can go and vote. Whoever wins, wins. If Republicans win, God bless them. Democrats win, God bless them. But let's be very, very clear that, Donald Trump can become president again. I want to say it right here. Today is Thursday, July 14, 2022. I don't care if they charge him with everything in the kitchen sink. He can still become president of the United States of America, win election, and especially with the voter suppression. And once you get in there, hey, it's all federal prosecutions. Pardon everybody, including yourself. That's what's going to happen. Okay, and that could happen. Okay, that could happen.
Opinion like that, and I think Chairman Thompson was quite prudent to say that he was leaving it to the FBI. There are a lot of loose ends, and they're not just loose ends. There are a lot of facts continuing to be developed And I don't know how long it will go on, but I think it may go on a bit longer. And the article that we wrote, that you referred to, really doesn't deal with those loose ends. It deals with what is sort of out there now very clear from the hearings. And that's sort of the donut rather than the hole in the donut. And I think what we talked about, and I'd be happy to say more, is the enormous amount of evidence which the committee hearings have brought to light, showing that Donald Trump was the driving force behind this entire effort to overturn the election. January 6th was part of it for sure, but it wasn't all of it. There was all sorts of other things, influencing people in the states on their vote counts, influencing the Justice Department, efforts to influence Mike Pence. All of it is central to this plan. And our article discusses the ways the hearing shows Donald Trump is at the heart of all of it.
And I do want to...
And the point here is that the mechanism was held for November 2020, but now people are running for office who believe the lie about the election in 2020, that Donald Trump won, et cetera, and those people make it to power. And if they do, they can go ahead and do what they want to do and put Donald Trump in as president in November 2024. So that's the game plan, and it may well work. Okay, and Democratic Party, if you don't stand up and have hearings and explain things to the American public in a fashion that explains it on a regular basis, and call in all these Secretary of States and analyze what's going on with the voting, that in order to save democracy, that's your job. Okay, that's what you're there for. Okay, to have these hearings. Okay, have these hearings and explain it to the American public. Just as you're doing with the January 6th committee. Do the same thing when it comes to voting in America and securing voting and making sure everything's done fairly like it was back in November 2020.
Hear about that, but one question that flows out of that is why you believe that the benefits to that outweigh the risks.
Well, I think it really goes to the fact that the evidence we now have across the board of his conduct show his own personal involvement time and again in very personal ways in interfering in a way that was intended to overturn the election. This could have been a set of facts where all sorts of different people ran around and did things, and you could argue about whether Donald Trump really knew about it, to what extent he was involved in it, to what extent he's the cause of it. Well, those aren't the facts. The real facts are Donald Trump was driving the entire program. That's why it's critical that he be held to account.
Mary Trump, Donald Trump's niece, Dr. Mary Trump, was on a show, and she said that, hey, powerful white men have never been held accountable. And she went back to Robert E. Lee, right? And everything like that and all. So, I don't believe that any charge will ever be brought against President Trump. And even if they are, he can easily get reelected. Easily. And then just give himself pardon. And that's the way things go. Hey, if you don't have hearings on what's going on with voting throughout this country.
We can't have a system where a president can willfully, deliberately, and with no ambiguity act to overturn a legitimate election and nobody does anything about it. If we have that system, our system won't work. So something has got to be done.
When you talk about what we know versus the loose ends, of those loose ends, which do you think would most help in making a complete case?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think one big picture question, which I think we're going to hear more about next week, and we've already heard quite a lot about it, goes to the issue of Donald Trump summoning people, being aware they were armed, perhaps really directly soliciting violence on their part. It seems he certainly didn't care if they engaged in violence. He wasn't concerned about it. So those facts developing, I think, further would be significant. But the point I want to...
Let me just make this point. None of this is new. Check out American history. It's happened before, okay? where you've had these type of insurrections. It's happened before, all right, in our country. It's not new. It's happened many times on the local level, especially right after, or what, even during Reconstruction. So people just don't know their history.
Stress is that on the question that's really most important, and that's the question of, did Donald Trump personally engage in a very serious way in trying to illegally overturn the election, knowing that there was no fraud involved in it? That evidence is now very powerful without collecting further evidence that I can see. Now, the important thing to know is that the Justice Department has to ultimately make this call. They have to have the witnesses ready to go. They have to have admissible testimony. What we saw in the hearing was not necessarily all what you would call admissible testimony that can be used in court. You'd have to look at it piece by piece. So there's a professional judgment to be made by the Justice Department. But the facts that have come out across the board showing Donald Trump's involvement and overriding, time and again, overriding the objections, the resistance, the opposition of his own people to every different thing that he did, that's a very powerful evidence that he engaged in criminal acts to overturn the election. And our view is clearly needs to be prosecuted in order to deter that conduct in the future.
I want to go back to something we heard from...
The problem with that is that you have militias out there, and you saw what happened at the Capitol, and DOJ may be afraid of that happening throughout this country. So there's a lot going on with respect to that and history. Bottom line, Democratic Party, you need to eliminate the Southern strategy, win over white voters, okay? How do you do that? Because right now, too many white voters vote based upon their skin color. If you're poor white, poor black, poor Latino, poor Asian person, you're all the same people, okay? Or middle class, you're all the same people. You all want the same thing. Food in your stomach, clothes on your back, shoes on your feet, shelter over your head, right? Wonderful education, great jobs, same people. Southern strategy has been used to divide and conquer. It's been used very well, very effectively. And you have to deal with that issue of racism. Now, after the Civil War, go to Dr. King's speech from March 25th, 1965. You had black men and white men voting together in fusion coalition. Yes, you had something called the 15th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which allowed black men to vote. Of course, they took that right away, and black men in the South, white women and black men and black women in the South could not vote until August 6, 1965, Voting Rights Act was passed, right? But in the 19th century, they were voting together in fusion coalitions. They didn't care about color. It's economics. And that's the same thing here today. It's all about economics, all right? People want the same thing. They want an opportunity to have life, liberty, pursuit, happiness. And there's so many people who are out there who all they want is just to have peace. And that goes for Democrats and Republicans. Racism is on the ropes, okay? But you have to clearly articulate, and you have to deal with things like critical race theory. There's so-called critical Italian theory. The Italians were mistreated, especially those from Sicily, the dark-skinned Italians, right? That's a fact. They were discriminated against. Same with the Irish. They were discriminated against, okay? Mistreated in America. That is a fact. Go back to March 25th, 1911, the Triangle Shirt Waste Factory fire, right? What happened with those immigrants, okay? Hey, there's one race, the human race. We're all human. Everyone has a right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. You need to have an assault weapons ban. Blue lives matter. All human life matters. That includes black lives. Talk to the police unions. We need to get the AR-15s off the streets. We need to bring back the assault weapons ban that the Republican Party in 2004 allowed to what? Allowed to expire. Talk to the unions. Talk to the widows. Our children need to be protected. Citizens need to be protected. Our police should be protected. What happened to Uvalde, right? You saw that 77 minutes, okay? And where that kid had the assault AR-15, all right? or whatever gun he had there. We need to protect our police, protect our children, protect citizens. Deal with the issues squarely in their face, okay? And talk to people, all right? Don't allow race to divide. But see, the problem is, you have read the book Dog Whistle Politics: How Code of Racial Appeal Has Reinvented Race and Wrecked the Middle Class by Professor E. Handy Lopez. Watch the video with Lee Atwater. I'll explain the Southern strategy, and deal with it and bring people together. Thank you for being my YouTube channel, One Race, Human Race, All Human. Today is Thursday, July 14th, 2022. God bless you and God keep you.